name is Kat, and today I am very excited to talk about my favorite books of 2019. Now, my goal for last year was to read 52 books, and I managed to read 51, so cool. And we'll talk about why I failed my reading challenge in a little bit here, but I'm really not mad about it. I actually read several books more than once this year, but I only counted it as one read on Goodreads, so I want to say half of the books in this video I read and then immediately reread because I just loved them that much. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Coming in at number 10, I have Summer of Salt by Katrina Leno. This is a light fantasy that reads very much like a contemporary novel. It's like part mystery, part coming of age story with a little bit of magic sprinkled in. We follow a girl named Georgina who comes from a family where all of the women are touched by magic and they all manifest some kind of ability. Her twin sister already has her ability, and Georgina is worried that with a couple months before her 18th birthday, her ability just might not show up. And then there's a bit of a mystery involving this allegedly 300-year-old bird who comes to the island to roost every summer. And people come from all over the world to this island to see and study this rare bird. But when the bird is late, suspicion starts to turn toward Georgina's family because of their magic. And that's really all I want to say about this book, because I do think it's the kind of read that is best gone into not knowing a lot. It's a very short read. It's only like 250 pages, and it's just lovely. The writing is beautiful. I loved the family dynamics and the mystery. There's also a female-female romance, which doesn't play a huge role in the book, but it was still very cute, and I really enjoyed that. This was just a charming, wonderful little book that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I cannot wait to read again. The next book that I have here is Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo was one of my favorite books of the previous year, so I was quite keen to pick up more by her. This is an adult contemporary romance about a woman named Hannah who is feeling kind of lost and directionless in her life. She keeps moving cities and changing jobs, and she ends up moving back to her hometown to kind of recalibrate herself. To celebrate being back, her best friend Gabby takes her out to a bar for the night. And there, Hannah runs into her high school boyfriend, her first love. At the end of the night, when things are winding down, Hannah is faced with a choice. She can either leave now and go with Gabby back to her house, or she can stay with Ethan and he'll give her a ride back to Gabby's later. And from that point, the book splits into two concurrent parallel storylines where we follow Hannah as she lives through each of these decisions. I loved this book for so many reasons. Taylor Jenkins Reid is fantastic at creating characters that feel so real, but I especially loved the themes and ideas that this book plays around with. Is anything meant to be? How much of our life is determined by chance? And is there such a thing as a soulmate? Because in each of these concurrent storylines, Hannah has a romance and she believes that that is her soulmate. I am trash for soulmate stories. Like, I don't know what it is, but I just love exploring that concept, and I really love how it was explored in this book. And while I loved the romance aspect of this book, I also really loved the friendship between Gabby and Hannah that we get to see in both of these timelines. Fantastic book, highly recommended, and I'm looking forward to reading even more of Taylor Jenkins Reid's backlist. The next book that I have here is The Unnie Mooners by Christina Lauren. This is an adult contemporary romance where we follow a woman named Olive who is used to being the unlucky twin. Her sister Amy just stays winning. Like, she even managed to finance most of her wedding by winning contests. Unfortunately, everyone at the wedding comes down with an awful case of food poisoning, except for Olive and Ethan, who is the groom's brother and Olive's arch nemesis. The honeymoon, which was won in a contest, is non-refundable, so someone has to go on it. So Olive and Ethan agree to a temporary truce and they head off to Maui for 10 days. The plan is to not spend much time together at all, but that gets complicated when everyone at this resort is expecting them to be newlyweds. And from there, fake marriage rom-com shenanigans ensue. I adored this book. It was so fun and hilarious. Like, I was laughing out loud at parts. I have a couple other Christina Lauren books that I have not yet read that I am now all the more eager to pick up because this was fantastic and I can't wait to read more by them. The next book that I have here is Supernova by Marissa Meyer. This is the third and final book in the Renegades trilogy, which is a YA sci-fi series. I guess I would call it sci-fi. It's a hero versus villain kind of story, and we follow two main characters, Adrian, who is with the heroes, and Nova, who is with the villains. In the first book, Nova finds a way to kind of infiltrate the heroes group and join them. So there's a lot of fun, like, secret identity shenanigans and a little bit of a spy versus spy dynamic going on. I love this world. I love the characters. I love Marissa Meyer's writing style. Like, it just plays out so cinematically. She's so good at describing action and like battle scenes and the superpowers. I would rank the Lunar Chronicles above this trilogy. Like, I did love that one more, but I did still love this trilogy and I would definitely recommend it, especially if you loved the Lunar Chronicles and you haven't given this trilogy a try yet. Try it. I recommend it. The next book that I have here is Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. This is one of the books that I read more than once this year. I started with the audiobook, which was fantastic, and then I watched the Amazon series, which was super fantastic, and then I had to buy a physical copy for my collection, and then I had to read the physical copy because I just love the words so much. Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett are brilliant writers. Like, not only do I love their ideas and their characters and their stories, but on a writing level, they are just so damn good. I didn't say what this is about yet, did I? Okay. There's a lot going on here. There's a large cast of characters. It's a pretty large story in terms of scope, but basically it's about an angel and a demon who have been on Earth for thousands of years, and they are kind of friendly rivals. And then they learn that it's just about time for Armageddon, and it's time for the Earth to be destroyed. Having lived on Earth for thousands of years, both of them kind of like it here and they don't really want to see it get destroyed. So they decide to team up and stop Armageddon, but little bit of a problem. They seem to have misplaced the Antichrist. There's a lot more going on. There's a lot of other characters, a lot of other players involved. And yeah, I loved it. Like I said, I read the book twice and I watched the show probably like 4 or 5 times. Honestly, it might be my favorite book adaptation ever. David Tennant and Michael Sheen are fantastic. Actually, the whole cast is fantastic. And Neil Gaiman wrote the episodes and was super involved in the creation of the show. So it's a very faithful adaptation and it's really, really good. I love it all. Next up is the Folk of the Air Trilogy by Holly Black. I read all 3 of these books for the first time this year, and I actually read Queen of Nothing twice. My favorite book in the trilogy has got to be The Wicked King, Book 2. Then probably The Cruel Prince. And my least favorite in the trilogy is Queen of Nothing, because I felt this was a little bit rushed and a little bit scattered. However, this trilogy still makes my favorites list because the pros outweigh any cons. I adore Holly Black's writing and her world building. I love the way she writes fairies. I love the atmosphere of these books. I love the power dynamics and the struggle for power that this trilogy chronicles. But what really, really does it for me is the relationship. Jude and Carden are one of my favorite ships of all time. I just love them so much. If you don't know what this trilogy is about, I don't know where you've been the last 2 years. But basically, we are following a teenage girl named Jude, who is kind of a reverse changeling. She is a mortal girl who has been brought to the fairy world and raised there. And we follow her as she navigates the dark and complicated, but also beautiful world of fairy. But yeah, Holly Black remains one of my favorite authors of all time. I love this trilogy. I love the journey that the characters go on, but most of all, I love the characters a whole lot. Next up is the reason I failed my reading challenge, because on the last day of 2019, when I was 2 books behind, instead of reading 2 short books, I decided that I needed to read The Toll by Neil Shusterman, which is almost 700 pages long. This is the 3rd and final book in the Arc of a Scythe trilogy, which is possibly the greatest trilogy I've ever read in my life. I would need to reread the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy and the Infernal Devices trilogy to really reassess my top 3 ranking, but this trilogy was amazing. I was not expecting it, even though I saw everyone on BookTube hyping up the first 2 books over the years. But still, I resisted reading this trilogy for quite a while because I didn't think I was gonna like it as much as everyone else. But the only reason this trilogy is not at the top of this list is because I've found that my personal favorites tend to be books that have a very strong central romantic relationship, as you will see when we get into my top 3. And this series is not romance-centric. There are some romantic relationships that I very much enjoyed, but there's so much more going on. This trilogy takes place in a utopian future where we have beaten death. Everyone is essentially immortal. However, to control the population, some people still need to die. So there are people known as scythes who decide who lives, who dies, who tells your story. The scythes have a quota of how many people they need to kill, and in this utopian world where everyone's immortal, essentially, and nothing bad ever really happens, the scythes are the scariest thing. But the scythes are also respected and revered as much as they are feared, because they're the ones who have the most power in the society. They are untouchable by laws, they can do whatever they want, and they're the ones who decide who lives and who dies. In the first book, we follow 2 characters who become scythe apprentices. They start to learn killcraft, and they start to be introduced to the scythe society. So the series explores a lot of themes surrounding death and morality and religion and politics and just generally what happens when you have a perfect world that is filled with imperfect humans. Every book in this trilogy is amazing. All 3 of these books are full 5-star reads for me. But The Toll is definitely my favorite of the 3. It's such a fantastic conclusion. The scope of the story has broadened so much by this point. We're following a lot more characters than we do in the beginning. There's all these different storylines that intersect in the most mind-blowing, awesome ways. The tension and the pacing of this 700-page book was just blowing my mind as I was reading it. I was reading it and I was so stressed and I was like, I can't believe how good this is. This is so good. This trilogy is just masterfully plotted and executed. The way the subplots and the mysteries are woven together is just I'm so impressed by this book, by this trilogy. It's really, really, really great stuff. Okay, we're moving into the top 3 now. The next book here is one that no one is surprised to see on my list of favorites, and that is Wayward Son by Rainbow Rowell. This is another book that I read more than once this year. I think I'm on my fourth read. I read the physical book twice, and I'm on my second listen of the audiobook. This is the sequel to my favorite book of all time. It is the second book in the Simon Snow trilogy. I'm not going to talk too much about this book here in this video because I shared my thoughts in more detail in a book haul. I'll link that down below. But yeah, surprise, surprise, I loved this book. I love Rainbow Rowell's writing. I really love these characters. I love the world and the magic system and how the magic system was expanded in America in this book. And even though it hurt, I loved the angst and the portrayal of Simon's depression and how he's kind of lost after what happened in book one. Like, he doesn't really know what to do with his life. He's really struggling, and it's taking a toll on all of his relationships. I am very excited and a little nervous for the third book in this trilogy. This book made me laugh. It made me cry. It sent me into a tailspin of emotions at the somewhat abrupt ending. But yeah, I loved this, and I'm so glad that this isn't the end of their story. Next up is my second favorite book of 2019, which is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. Another book that I read twice back to back because, oh my god. This is a new adult contemporary romance that's set in kind of an alternate present day. We're following Alex, who is the son of the President of the United States, and he has kind of a beef with the Prince of Wales. But their rivalry is bad PR. So in order to smooth things over, they have to fake a friendship for the tabloids. But then their fake friendship starts to evolve into a real romance. And that might actually be more complicated than their initial rivalry. I just adored this book. Like, it's funny and cute and romantic, and I loved the central relationship between Alex and Henry. I loved the discussions surrounding sexuality, and the sort of alternate reality political landscape was something that I did not know I needed to see so badly. I was not expecting the last 20% to turn me into a crying little baby. The first time I read this was pretty much in a single sitting. Like, by the time I was getting to the ending, I was starving. So I was like cooking dinner while I was still reading it. And that put me in the position where, as I was reading the last few pages of this book, I was just standing in my kitchen, stirring pasta and sobbing. It was a good cry. Like, it was mostly happy, a little sad, more cathartic than I signed up for. But yeah, this was just a fantastic book, especially for a debut novel. So yeah, I cannot wait to read more by Casey McQuiston. And here we are. It's time to talk about my number one favorite book of 2019. Do you know what it is? If you follow me on Twitter, you probably do, because I've been screaming about it over there. My favorite book of the year is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Mutar and Max Gladstone. This is actually a novella. It's only 200 pages, but it is perfect. Now, I will say, this isn't going to be a perfect book for everyone. It's adult sci-fi and it's hard sci-fi. Like, we really lean in to the science fiction side. But it's also a love story with very flowery, poetic language. So like, hard sci-fi plus flowery, romantic language is not a combination that's gonna work for everyone, but oh boy, did it really work for me. And it's another book that I read more than once, and I definitely enjoyed it more the second time around because I understood what was happening better. This book is kind of hard to explain, so bear with me as I try. Basically, there are all these different timelines, all these different threads of time, parallel worlds, and far, far in the future, way down the timeline, these threads of time either lead to a technology future or a biological, like, plant-based future. Both of these distant future worlds want to ensure that their world is the one that wins. So both of them are sending agents back in time to change things and manipulate the timeline and make as many threads, parallel worlds as possible lead to the future that they want. So this book is following two agents, these two women from the two opposing factions who are known only by the names Red and Blue. They start off as rivals, enemies from these opposing futures. And at first, they're just thwarting each other's plans, and they start leaving kind of mocking, teasing letters behind, taunting each other. But as time goes on, as they start to exchange more letters, their relationship starts to change. And it is just everything I could ever want from a book. The world building is so cool and creative, like the sci-fi elements and the historical elements. The writing is gorgeous. It's beautiful, lyrical. It's like poetry. It is the female enemies to lovers romance of my dreams. Like, it's such a beautiful love story. It's so romantic and so weird. And I was ugly crying at parts of it. I honestly would not change a single thing about this book. Like, the first time I finished it, I thought, oh, maybe I'd like it more if it was longer. But no, it is the perfect length. It doesn't need to be longer. It's perfect. For me, at least. It's perfect for me. Like again, I recognize that this isn't gonna do it for everyone. But for me, this was perfect. It is my favorite book of 2019. All right, there you have it. Those are my top 10 favorite books of 2019, and that is gonna do it for this video today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a wonderful night and a wonderful new year, and I will have another video up soon, so I will see you then. Bye!